John Summers is the motoring historian. He was a company car thrashing technology sales rep that turned into a fairly inept sports bike rider. Hailing from California, he collects cars and bikes built with plenty of cheap and fast, and not much reliable. On his show, he gets together with various co-hosts to talk about new and old cars, driving, motorbikes, motor racing, and motoring travel.
Good day, good morning, good afternoon. It is John Summers, the motoring historian, with Mark Gammie. And unusually for us, we have a themed episode today, Mark, don't we? You're nodding.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
We put minutes of research in.
Say what? We might not stop talking over each other in a moment. We might break.
We've put minutes of research into this.
Yeah, fully. Yeah, you described it as 10 earlier, which, but the producer was saying to me, as we were joking about in the last pod, Ronnie Corbett and the producer, Eric, was saying to me that he prefers us off the cuff. He thinks we're better off the cuff. He probably means just ramble less and stay on the point, doesn't he?
Not off the wrist, off the cuff, yeah.
No. At least I think that's what he meant. Yeah, I hope that's what he meant. But look, I am really going to. There's a serious point here, and that serious point is that instead of prattling on about irrelevant stuff like music and things in the episode, which you can do, we should at least give the listener some of what they came for. Which is they came for Le Mans. So you and I have both been to Le Mans. I'm going to begin, and this is a storytelling podcast, so I'm going to begin with a Le Mans story, or more or less a story, more an anecdote. I went 1 year, and for separate reasons that we may talk about further into the pod, the rest of my group, the other three guys I went with, decided they would leave early. Just to do with some rain and so on. Exactly, right? I'm just wussies, right? Just absolute bloody, Now, feeding into my decision to do what I did was the fact that I had taken the not great decision to camp in a bivvy bag, which listeners, you may not know, is like an army thing where it's like a large canvas bag where you can put your where you can put your backpack and your shoes and your clothes and all of your other camping kit at the bottom of it. And then you can have your sleeping bag inside it, and then you can zip it up above your head and you can sleep anywhere and stay warm. And it's really quite a cool thing and really a, minimalist, cool way of traveling, especially for people who can't be asked or aren't very good at putting up tents. So anyway, I was in the bivvy bag. It fucking rained. And when it rained. And there was like an inch of water in the campsite. So I was just like, this is not bloody cricket, is it? So, it's not cricket, it's anyway, whatever. So the others were like, where we're going. And I was like, man, well, I don't want to do that. And they were like, well, we want to go, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to have to make the most of it whilst I can. So I walked from the campsite, which was inside the Bugatti circuit, up past White House to Arnage. Now, this must have been, I went like the 3 years, like 2000, 2001, 2002, something like that, or 99, 2002. They're that kid somewhere in that era. And I went, I think, 3 times. And they all sort of merged together in my mind. I've just thought of another amusing anecdote to do with the moped and going and getting beer and an encounter with a gendarme. That took place in Arnage village. And there is a top tip there. Stay in Arnage village, people. It's conveniently placed and you can walk everywhere. And if you've got a bike, that is a good place to. Never done it myself, but should have done it. Point of this early vignette in our pod today is I walked down to Arnage in the middle of the night in the rain. And when the cars come, you can hear the cars coming around Indianapolis. And then Indianapolis is a righty, isn't it, where you brake in. And then they stop and there's that little bus stop, left-hander, then a short straight and a right-hander before they go off down towards White House. And I was stood there. You could see the brake discs glowing. And I stood there for ages, hypnotized. And it was one of the single most enjoyable things that I've ever done in motorsport. It really was. The fact that it goes on and on and on and on is really what sets it apart, and sets it apart as visual and ordinary and, spectator experience.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment, mate. I mean, I enjoyed it when we went. We stayed at a little place outside that a bunch of my mates who go every year. But there's a gîte or a gentleman who has a chateau outside who sort of puts up people camping in his grounds. So there were, I mean, they were cold by the time we got there, but there were showers and the loos were quite nice. And you camped there and you could park your car next to your tent and so forth. And he did a little car show after a couple of days where he wandered around. And if you had a nice car, he'd tap you on the shoulder. Would you like to be in the car show and so forth? Which was good, and it was a nice place to stay, very civilized, but it was too far away. It was too annoying to get there and back.
What's going to be my question is how far away was it and where was it in relation to the circuit? Because we've jumped...
I'll dig the details out.
We've jumped right in here, folks, into like a travel experience here, but you've got to understand is Le Mans, the start-finish is like race circuit, right? But the Mulsanne Straight is a main road between some cities in France. So where you are in relation to the circuit is important because you can get to the circuit on public roads just about, or at least you could years ago. They're moving the goalposts on all of that, aren't they? The other thing is Mulsanne is so much more built up now than it used to be. But your chateau, where was it in relation?
I think it was like southeast, sort of a little bit southeast of the, west, southwest or west-southwest kind of direction from the circuit. So it wasn't too bad to get there. It was like a 10 or 15-minute drive, assuming that you were going to be doing 30 miles an hour only kind of thing. It wasn't, it was those sort of like nadgery bits. Of course, there's nowhere to park there. So getting there, you would either get one of you to drop you over or you'd try and get a coach, a bus or minibus or something over, and there'd be a couple in the morning, couple in the evening. So it was doable, but once you're there, it was a faff to get back there and back. I mean, I looked, and if you prepared to plan sort of a year plus in advance, you can Airbnb a very nice sleeps 10 people inside the circuit. Admittedly, quite a lot of money a night, like 1,500 euros, something like that a night, which is a lot of money, but not between 10 of you, it isn't. So, you're then 100 yards walk from the Mulsanne Straight, that sort of difference. So you're going to be probably blocked off. You aren't going to be driving around, but you could get there in advance and then have your electric scooter or Brompton or whatever to get around the place. And you've got inside access to the circuit. I think that's the way I would like to do it next time. But this chateau was nice. It was just a bit of a faff getting in and out.
It's editor John interrupting with a brief road test report on the Brompton. John's selling a Brompton right now. I'll post a picture of me riding it. I think you'll agree I look ridiculous. Maybe partly to do with the fact that it's me. Mostly to do with the fact that the Brompton is ridiculous. It's also the same price as a proper Gixxer. John and I discussed it, and he said, I'm not sure if this is the right thing to say, but I feel like it's kind of... And I went, well, it's for commuting and being in the corner of your flat in London if you've got no parking and so on. Then I rode it and I got off it and I said to him, it's kind of... I mean that in an unpejorative kind of way, it's like a kind of it's got a pedal assist. It's got 3 gears, you thumb the gears. It's really quite an interesting, nice piece of kit, and Brompton are evolving with the times. But
camping inside the circuit is what most people do. Camping in and around the start-finish is what most people do. And the French love to camp, and it is a bit of a camping-themed thing, right? Now, after my experiences of camping, we did pivot into a camper van at one point, and I would say fucking never again on that. And the reason for that is that the drive down there is a big part of Le Mans for your Englishmen. Now, we're going to talk about that separately because there is a heritage of the Bentley and Jaguar teams driving to Le Mans. So when you drive like a hooligan across France and nearly get arrested, which has happened to many Englishmen, not you or I, I hate to add, not you or I, I've never actually been pulled over in France, I would just say.
I haven't.
I hesitate to say that now because it's going to fucking happen, isn't it? But the point is that the drive down there was not fun in the camper van. So however great the camping experience was, because it spoiled a major element of the experience, just fuck on that. It was like sitting down at a rock show. Now, you
get you forget, of course, the most important thing is when you're leaving, there's all families on the overpasses on the péage waving at the cool cars. Yeah. The little kids and stuff waving at the cool cars.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like the doofus in the camper van not getting waved at.
No, slowly. You definitely don't. No. You definitely do not. I got to say, Gammie, I feel like now I'm thinking about it again. I'd fly and buy like the cheapest K5 Giggs 1,000 I could find in England. That's how I'd want to do it now. I think I'd probably fall off riding up the metal ramp of the ferry, wouldn't I?
But again, you sort of want someone who's got a boot. Just riding convoy with someone.
But I'm trying to imagine our fictitious listener wanting to, because ironically enough, right, the producer Eric is actually at Le Mans as we're recording this for the Le Mans Classic, as is the other motoring podcast network personality, William Ross, the Ferrari guy. They're together. I'm not. I think that he's doing Goodwood as well. So I'd be interested to know what they think of it when we get back. We may even do a crossover episode. I may even invite you, Mark, to do the.
There's 80 F1 cars. 80 historic F1 cars at the Festival of Speed this time.
Yeah, let's stay on track rarely as I do that with Le Mans, right? Because the point you made was it's better to camp inside the circuit in a house. Right, it's best to be in a house. The chateau was good, but it was a motherfuck getting to and from, because even when the traffic flows, there's nowhere to park nearby. And the solution to that is a very French solution, which is les bicyclettes, isn't it? If my pronunciation serves there, especially these electric ones, which leads me on to that little anecdote of where one of those years I went. One of the guys I went with had rehabilitated like his grandmother's Honda 50 shopping trolley moped, right? It was not like your like C90. This guy had like littler wheels, and was a step through, like a full on step, little white basket at the back. Don't remember the details, but I do remember drawing the short straw, having to go into Arnage to buy beer for the four of us at that time. And then it was the camper van. It was the year of the camper van. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I do remember a very large French gendarme who looked like, do you remember that? You will remember this. Allo, Allo, the British TV show, which listeners, really an amusing premise. It's a classic English farce, but it's set where it's Englishmen speaking with fake French accents. And the hero is a resistance worker who runs a cafe in France. It's like Nazi-occupied France. Yeah, his name is René, and he's having an affair with his two waitresses, as well as trying to keep this is very misogynistic, actually.
Hugely. Xenophobic, misogynistic, a lot of it.
And fully racist against the
sexist.
German. Yeah, it was. And
so a lot of boxes.
So obviously, all English people of a certain age lap this shit up, and all of us understand the cultural reference of Allo, Allo. And why the hell was I talking about?
The gendarme looked like René, presumably.
No, he looked like the English airman, the one that has the terrible accent, that is the policeman, but is an Englishman.
Oh, good moaning.
Good moaning, that one, yeah. That exactly like that. Well, anyway, but he wasn't good moaning. He was like, because I tried the whole non parlare.
Yeah,
monsieur. I tried that, and he was having none of that, and you know, I can't remember what he was cross about. I can't remember what I'd done. I remember the moped was loaded with beer. And I remember that when I resisted the moped or the beer being impounded, that it was like me or the beer. And I remember that when I got back to camp, I was like amazed that I'd escaped, not arrested, and with the moped. And they were pissed off that there wasn't beer or the money had gone. And I was like, I bought the beer, but the policeman confiscated. And they were like, you expect us to believe that? Like, you've stolen the money. And I remember being like, you fucking idiots. Which they were, in fairness. That year, I went with one guy who was a friend of...
Doubting you seems a bit harsh.
Sorry?
Doubting you seems pretty harsh.
Yeah, but this was the same guy that rode away from me when I fell off in Germany on the Gixxer.
Oh, that prick. Oh, okay.
Yeah, him and another guy, the guy who encouraged us to do the camper van, he worked for a large oil company. I can't remember your name if you're listening, but you'll remember who you are. And he'd recently received a job offer to go, and you'll be able to guess the oil company now, based upon the fact that he'd received a job offer to go and work for a very well-known Italian firm in their motor racing team. And do you know what? He'd said no. He wanted to stay in like Macclesfield or Morecambe or whatever horrific northern British town beginning with M, and he didn't want to move to Italy, and he didn't want to. And I was like, weren't you interested in working for, that company with the yellow shield and the black horse, Weren't you kind of interested in that? And he went, no. And I was like, oh dear. So I remember
What a
that.
shame we've fallen out of touch.
That was the year of the heat stroke. I walked the circuit and I got the worst heat stroke I've ever gotten. I passed out in the bushes just somewhere on the approach to Mulsanne. I'm going to give you my best Le Mans story. It's with Nick, the lad that left me in Germany. His mate Ian, who was a bit like Greep, nice guy, huge, big personality, a little irritating in a way that Greep isn't. Greep's mellow. Ian was a bit like, listen to me. But, nice enough guy. Nick knew him he was like a distributor like IT distributor. This is how we all knew each other. But Ian was a Ford guy. So, I had a bit of like bonding. He was from Essex, so a bit of bonding with him around that. Ian really appreciated the learning, really appreciated seeing your RS 2000 that day at your house. Thank you for your time. I hope Nick didn't treat you the way that he treated me. Unfortunately, I feel like Nick just doesn't understand how to make friends with people. Nick, if you're listening, I forgive you because you were a miserable person then and you're probably still miserable now. And I don't wish any more misery on you by hating on you. I don't hate on you. You gave me a really, really good story to tell. Had you come back and picked me up, I never would have won the Suzuki GS6R and maybe I never would have filled my garage. So your assholery actually helped me out, Nick. But Ian, you were a great guy and I really enjoyed doing Le Mans with you. And that suggestion late at night when we were walking back from the Chinese meal at Unandier to be like, the cars on Mulsanne, they're just down there. We could just walk down that person's driveway and into their back garden and probably see them. And I was young enough and foolish enough to be like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So we did. You could lie on the bank. We were lying on the bank looking through the bushes. And I remember watching the Corvettes pass with flames out of the exhausts. The road must have been probably 3 feet from the hedge. And we were lying, looking under the privet hedge. The following year, the guy had closed his gate and we weren't able to do that anymore. And looking online now, it seems that all of that land use in that part of the circuit has changed in the 25 years since I did that. That's my best Le Mans memory, to be lying, looking. I feel it's like a NASCAR driver. Oh, I knew I wanted to be a racing car driver when I climbed up the fence and looked in and saw the cars racing. It's almost like that. So, yeah. So the Corvettes, particularly, a wonderful piece of theatre. And in that moment, I couldn't believe how close they were. I couldn't believe how loud it was. It was a mixture of high-end Formula One, brahaha, and the Isle of Man TT and rallying. It's a little lane and it's really fast and it's in your face and there's fire and brakes and potential death.
Yeah, and the Corvettes are typically, at least traditionally, were the loudest. So, it's not surprising you pick them out.
Favourite Le Mans story, if you have one.
I don't know. I've got a specific one, really. I will say that, we touched on it briefly. The drive down for English folks is often a tradition. I know a guy, good mate of mine, I haven't spoken to him for ages, but he's still a great guy, Stu. Goes down every year with his buddies and he drives his TVR down and various other things. And they've got a little crew of them that go. The whole they deliberately drive quite a long way east, so they're not on the direct route to have more fun on the roads on the way down. So they're not driving through a speed trap every 15 feet. We stopped in a really nice little one of the classic sort of little French town squares with the bistro sort of thing, and rocked up and had quite a nice and cost-effective, sausage baguette avec frite and a beer, and then carried on the drive. It's a really delightful drive. If you're lucky with the weather that year, it can be a really nice, pleasant way to get down there.
This is why the opening sequence of Le Mans with McQueen driving there is so important. The drive to the circuit, the concept, they call it Le Sart, it's important to understand the context of it. The other thing is, it's important to understand that the town is actually not conveniently placed for you to access the circuit remotely. There's no any hotels nearby, they'll all be booked up. We did the 24-hour bike race, like Moto 24. Did that with my family a couple of years ago. I think I mentioned it on a separate pod. But we stayed at an Ibis hotel right by the train station. It took us more than 2 hours to walk.
Yeah. I mean, that's not unusual. I mean, it's a big circuit. It's a really big circuit, and it's France, not England, so things can be spread out because there's enough room. So it's more like American distances in between things. So, and if it's a hot day, it's hot and dusty, and there's a lot of people there, and there's not a lot of shade. So you do want to be careful of take a hat, have plenty of water. If you're going to buy a T-shirt, take out a small mortgage before you go, because it's going to be 120 quid for whatever the shitty T-shirt is that
Really?
is too busy.
The moto ones weren't that expensive. I guess moto's not Le Mans, is it?
Yeah, and I've allowed for estimated inflation there, but I remember the T-shirts when I went there, which must be 10, 15, 20 years ago, were 85 quid.
So before we talk about the drive down, let's talk about any other tips around. So we're saying camping, we're saying drive something decent down there because that's part of it. What else are we saying? We're saying that if you don't like camping, it's fine. Just plan ahead and do an Airbnb or something like that. If you're a pedal cyclist, that's good. If you're a lazy MF, get an e-bike, and that's probably going to help.
Yeah, the only challenge for any of those things is where do you leave them if you want to leave them.
Do you even do that? Do you just sit with it on the bank somewhere?
Yeah, you can do, but again, and that would be probably a pretty good way to do it. But I mean, all the bits around the circuit are several deep around every fence. You've got to mooch out a ways around or be much later in the evening or the following morning in order to be able to get to the fence, unless you get there early and have your chair and stake out your square footage.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I'm not German. I'm not doing that.
This is the thing with it. Some people like to have the chair and sit in one place. I like to be a walkie all around. Yeah.
But it's a long time. It is a long time.
It is, and you're also doing yourself a grave disservice if you don't walk all around the pits in practice and you don't do the fun fair at night and you don't walk the whole circuit. There's a lot to do in that 24 hours, isn't there?
There's rock shows and stuff around the start. There's a firework display in the night.
I should mention this French band called Ashen, who myself, Ollie and Dane have watched some of, and Ollie cites them as being the worst band he's ever seen live. He's like, we're Ashen worse than Crowbar. And I'm like, dude, I don't like to be negative. There may be Ashen. I don't like to be negative, but possibly they even were.
I mean, Crowbar were shit, though.
I should just say, listeners, that both your hosts have seen Crowbar at least 4 times together. And I've seen Crowbar 6 times, I think, altogether. And I would
never having gone to see Crowbar.
Never having gone to see Crowbar and never having enjoyed them. The fact that they're still...
Just to be clear here, they were always the support. We only ever saw them supporting somebody else.
I don't like Crowbar. Not knocking the Crowbar.
You
don't like us, if you're even...
I mean, I'm sure they probably don't like us, and fair play to them. I would back them in their right to do that. But yeah, I mean, that is a dedication to providing pretty poor rock over a lot of time.
Don't they call it metalcore now? Isn't it like a style of metal that you and I never got into?
What shit?
Moving on. Music. What music should we do in this episode?
Tradition would suggest we should do that sort of weird French pop that is being played at 14-year-old discos, which has often got English lyrics in it that are deeply over-sexualized for the age group that they're being played to. That would be a traditional thing to do. I can't pretend to know that genre well enough, if I'm honest.
Yeah, we'll have to make do with that Air Sexy Boy track, won't we? We just have to do...
Yeah, I mean, that is a good track. There's a lot of that sort of thing played in France, and fair play to them. And look, I mean, I always say this about any travel. Have the radio on. Flick through the radios. If you're traveling through countries in a car especially, it gives you a real flavour of the country you're going through. It adds value to the reason why you're not flying over that country. You're driving through it, you have to get out and fill up the car, you have to, you stop and get food. You get a flavour of the country anyway. The same thing with the radio.
Well, to that end, and this ties completely to Le Mans, it's an important thing to understand if you've not been to France before, if you don't know France, is that they have toll roads and non-toll roads. And the toll roads are like American highways. They're perfectly maintained and so on. And you always see a lot of cars on fire in France for some reason. Is that always a lot of cars on fire? But whatever. Maybe they just, I don't know what the cause. So they don't drive that fast, do they? And they do like police crazily. But isn't it like 130 Ks? Isn't that the limit on the...
Yeah.
Anyway, the shtick I'm talking about is that thing in your Google Maps app where you can be like, avoid highways. Because if you avoid highways, as I've been doing this in England recently, my word, driving England on the A roads, it's slow. In every town, it's like a huge bottleneck. But in between the towns, it's the green and pleasant land poets wrote about and Americans and other people from around the world travel to see. You know, it's really there. Like the Cotswolds, it's really, if you ignore all the traffic and the new ugly houses on the edge of town, Cotswolds are exactly as you would imagine them to be if you were like a reader of... If you watch Miss Marple mysteries made in the 90s.
If you ride a motorbike, the traffic isn't even that bad.
If you ride a motorbike, the traffic isn't even that bad. I fully agree. The point is that France is the same, right? That if you stay off those main roads and if you go through the small towns and villages, oh my word, it is a rewarding travel experience. And I encourage visitors doing Le Mans, do it that way.
The flip side of that is if you need to make quick progress and if you're doing a fly in and out, it can be very useful depending on where you're coming in and out of. I'll give you the example. If you fly into Burgundy, what's the place at the bottom?
Bordeaux.
Yeah, Bordeaux. If you fly into Bordeaux, rent a car and then you're driving down to the Pyrenees, that section of péage there, it's just about the least used section of péage. But if you just want to thrash down to the mountains, I think I saw 4 cars on it. And we arrived at sort of 8:15, got in the rental car, blasted down to Pau for the Pau GP, and it took about an hour and 15 minutes, about 95 miles, something like that. And hardly any other cars, no speed cameras. And when I spoke to the host about it, and he said, yeah, the French sort of resented the money it got spent to build it, so they don't use it. And they don't want to pay. They'd rather just drive. And I can respect that.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't mean you can really blast down there.
In northern Spain, I did a trip to northern Spain with Dana years ago, and at that time, the EU had recently paid for loads of like payout of highway toll roads to be built, but the trucks didn't want to pay the tolls, so they stayed on on what in England would be like the A roads. You know, driving through the towns, and you'd be on the toll road, and you'd see the trucks driving slowly on the A roads between the towns, like running parallel. So I don't know what the situation was there, why they didn't want to use the main roads, didn't want to pay, because the motorway services there were absolutely deserted. You'd like stop at motorway services in the middle of the day, and if it was like one in England, it'd be like rammed with people. They'd be like hundreds of cars there, and there'd be like 3 cars there, and you'd go in the dining area and there'd be like all the staff there, but nobody actually eating any food. It was really peculiar. I mean, this was 20 years ago now, so it's maybe different now. The point is that you can really cover some ground. I mean, we had a BMW, like an F90 328 BMW as the rental car, which was a new car then, so it shows how long ago it was. And I remember setting the cruise at a speed that began in miles an hour with a 1 and a 2. I mean, that is how, like... I also remember being passed by a Passat turbo diesel with German number plates on it. And I was like, oh, that'll be the sales rep, won't it? That'll be a sales rep on the way to meet somebody in the south of the country kind of thing.
You got to make progress. I will say in the summer, be real careful because the end roads are fine, but the péage does get jammed up,
isn't it? We're now stepping away from my experiences in northern Spain.
This is back in France, but in the péages, France is the most visited country in the world. It's a big country. It's got a pretty good road network, and it's well maintained, and it's a decent speed of throughput. But you will get traffic. You will get, and as the further south you go, the worse the traffic will get. So be clever, set off early, or don't mind driving in the night. And you can make some really good progress. But that's the way to do it. Because that's the way that you can use the road effectively and cover some serious miles. And, if you've got a family, plug them in the back and let them sleep. If you drive it on a bank holiday or a weekend, it's going to be heaving and you're going to spend ages and ages in traffic.
There's a movie, isn't there? I can't remember the name of it, with a Mustang. It's got a Mustang and a GT40 and it's set in France. And there's a scene where he has to drive. He like wins the Monte Carlo rally or something. He has to drive through the night from the south of France up to Paris. I vaguely remember. It's black and white. I can't remember the name of it. It's not very good for the pod, is it? My God. Not that, it's not that
All
good.
the detail we give, isn't it? It's all the detail we give.
I know. But the beauty with it is I am going to be able to edit myself in. And it
That's
sounds
true.
so natural because I always take up the time to set up the microphone again. I don't just hit record on the PC. So when I interrupt myself, it goes like, and it sounds like completely different. So it'll be fine. It'll be just perfect.
Smooth.
The movie is Un homme et une femme, a man and a woman. It's 1966. It's slow, but it's worth watching for the cars. Un homme et une femme. All right, here endeth part 1 of this series on Le Mans. And this is the end of our thoughts on accommodations, logistics and practical stuff. The future episodes are around history more, if I can be coherent.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.